Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs and share our experience to hopefully help you have your best game. We are recording, and it is Thursday afternoon, and normally we drop an episode on Thursday morning, so we're late. So we're going to do this in one take, and then I'm going to process it, and boom, it's going to go out to the world.
Perfect.
Or the multiverse. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
Is that all right? So we talked a lot about encounter design and Traveler and all this good stuff, and you and I talked offline about taking a detour around or away from those things for a moment to talk about something that has popped up in the, for me at least, the angry social media gamosphere. And that is D&D's art. I don't know if you remember, James, but a couple of years ago, Chris and I did an episode about D&D's art. And it was more broadly about like the value and importance of art in gaming. And he and I had kind of different takes on how important it was or not or whatever. So if you're listening to this or you're about to listen to this and you listen to that one from way back when, this is not a rehash necessarily. There is overlap, but this is not a rehash. So are you familiar at all with the recent kerfuffle in the social media and like, you know, I don't know, call it radiosphere?
So other than what you've told me, not really, because I will preface this with two things. One, since I've gotten into Traveler, I've done next to no D&D that I've played. I actually I might be changing that next week, doing a singular D&D one shot for the first time in like 6 months or more. And then on the other side of things, I also have next to no social media. So I see nothing unless somehow organically I learn about it.
You are so much better off. You are like, now I'm an oddity in that I have no social media apps on any of my mobile devices. I have an iPad and I have my phone, and I don't have any social media, anything on those. The only social media I have is on my desktop, which is deliberate because I can only get sucked over the precipice when sitting here.
Right.
I have Facebook and I have X primarily because there is a work function related to those. I have my own accounts that I use, and I thought, oh, gee, it'd be really cool to like find different kinds of gamers and game things. And there are some interesting Traveler groups on Facebook. Like if you really want to get into deep discussions about just how much fuel it's going to take to get from A to B, or with this size freight, you'll find people want to talk about that. But X is the place that you want to go if you want to see. There is some good conversation, but there's also a lot of raging. So yeah, the most recent kerfuffle is over a piece of art that WOTC released on their Facebook and their X accounts, along with talk about how some of the proceeds of sales related to books in a certain time frame would go to a certain kind of nonprofit, blah blah blah, whatever. I'm not talking about that. I am not interested in that for the sake of this conversation. It's the piece of art that was put out there, and I'll put a link to that. That will be WOTC recent art. That's what I'll call it, and I'll put a link to that, and you can find it and look at it if you haven't already seen it. And a lot of people had a lot to say about this piece of art. So what do you think of it? I shared it with you. It depicts this happy, joyful, celebratory scene. What looks like I don't know if it's a wedding or if it's just like a couple that's like really into each other, and everyone around them is so happy that they're there, and it's in these really washed out pastel colors, and it's one word that comes to mind when I look at it is frolic. Everyone's frolicking in the damn picture. There is a dragon way in the background. The actual, like my judgment word for it, I will not share. I won't say it. What do you think of it?
Well, the first thing I thought of when I saw the image was, what is this adding? Like
It's a
that
great
that's
question.
and that's what I ask when I see a
And you
lot of.
mean like to the game, to like
Correct. Or just even to the general like world of Dungeons and Dragons,
yeah,
like this
okay.
thing that has been around for decades and we have all this stuff. And that's where I'm like, whenever I look at a piece of art for Dungeons and Dragons, I'm like, what is this offering to the players or the GMs that are seeing this art? So when I think of like, and we'll use an example because we've discussed this specific book of Dungeons and Dragons that's been around forever, the Monster Manual. Like, what is the goal of the art in the Monster Manual? It is to show you the things that you will most likely be fighting throughout a Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
campaign. Now, it's probably the most specific of all the books for that kind of stuff because it's literally just artwork of the monsters, but that is what it's adding to the game is you now can see these pieces of okay, this is what I'm supposed to visualize when I'm fighting this thing. Players handbooks and dungeon masters guides and even campaigns generally different there they might depict a town or a party or a specific race that way you know okay this is what is supposed to be conjured up in my mind but when I see those art pieces I'm always asking okay is this supposed to be telling me what I'm supposed to think of when I'm thinking of a specific character or is this what I'm supposed to be thinking of when I'm thinking of a setting or is this something that's supposed to help me get a general tone of the way like maybe this campaign's supposed to play like when I read Curse of Strahd and I read that book, it gives me a very specific tone that they want that campaign to be played in. So when I saw this image, I was like, what is this adding to me as a player or a GM that I couldn't just come up with on my own? Why does WOTC feel like I need to know this to understand their world? And that was really the first thing that came to me.
That's a really great perspective. Like what because I think whether you realize it or not, when you're looking at and you're talking about the Monster Manual. I picked up the first edition Monster Manual with that dreadful like above ground, below ground, like panorama type picture on the front, and then just black and white line drawings for the most part
Mm-hmm.
throughout. And yeah, there are a lot of images of individual monsters, but most of the depictions of monsters in the original Monster Manual are monsters doing things. It's a giant spider about to attack. It's a specter coming through, I think, a wall. It's a there's a goofy picture. I don't know if it's in the Monster Manual or somewhere else of like a scared armored knight jumping away from a rust monster. It's
Mm.
things like that. It not only gives you an idea of what the heck what is an Otyugh? What is a Neo Otyugh? What these things that came from like Gary Gygax's and Dave Arneson's minds, what do they look like? Well, having a picture there helps. But it also, like you just said, it answers the question that you may not be cognizant that you are asking, what does this do? What does this add? What can I do with this? And so, yeah, and that's a personally, I think art in a role playing game, especially a fantasy role playing game, is really important for a designer and a writer to convey their vibe and their look because it's all inside your head. You know, you talk about Curse of Strahd, that communicates this like cloudy, damp, like gothic, this very like almost to me it's like almost Tim Burton-esque sort of vibe. And clearly that was on the writer's minds. And a bajillion words aren't good. Just get an artist who can paint what you're saying and or draw what you're and there it is. And so I think art is very important in establishing, like you said, a vibe. Um, yeah, so I know that it seems to me that this fight, argument, whatever, kerfuffle, pushback from a segment of the fan base of the audience of D&D has really picked up since the 2024 revision. It wasn't so much there were some complaints, not so much about 5e art. It's not it's the newest version of the core books. It's the covers of the core books, and it's the content of it's the depiction of the different races or whatever WotC calls them this week. What do you think? I mean, how much of that art have you looked at?
I've seen just a few pieces that a friend of mine has shown me. So, just because I bought a bunch of the 5e books
Mhm.
and realized from my friend who had the 3.5 books, and then my other friend who had the 4 books, and then the other friend who had all the 5e books, like up to that point, I was like, oh, I really just need to buy one system. And then if I want to update information,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to do that. So I just stuck with that. So I haven't seen a whole lot other than what they've shown me.
Right.
And again, this is where, to me, with D&D, they tend to change things when they switch editions.
Mm.
And that's where it's like, okay, we're getting a new like general idea of how the
Yeah.
game works. If you don't like this newest edition, whatever it is, at the time it was 5e, well, you just get the 4e or the 3.5 or the 3 or whatever level you want. You go get
Well,
those
but
books, and that's,
they don't want
yeah,
you to do that though. They
correct.
want you to be like, oh, it's like a software upgrade. Well, I
It's the
can't
shiny
run
new
D&D
thing.
3.5 anymore. It's not compatible. I have to play 4. Oh, I can't run. Their 4E is not available. I have to. That's how they want it to. That's how they want
Right.
you and your wallet to react to it. But I think you're onto something, that there is definitely an art style. Uh, Maybe even sometimes like a reset or a
Hmm.
redirect with new editions. And if you go back and look at first edition stuff, um, virtually all the interior art is black and white.
Yep.
A lot of it is line drawings and other styles of art. You have color covers. You have color covers of the adventure modules. But everything else is black and white. It's not until I don't even know. And see, the thing is, I skipped second edition.
Mm.
Um, the quality of the art went up because they got some really good in-house artists. And I'll circle, but if I don't mention the in-house artists from the 80s in a little while, ask me, because I want to circle back to that. It's not until third edition that we start getting color art on the inside, and we get glossy pages, not just white paper. And how much have you looked through like third edition and 3.5 books?
I've definitely flipped through a decent amount. Like I said, a friend of mine, he his goal is to collect all of the 3.0 and 3.5 books.
Oh boy.
That's just he wants to do that. So I flipped through some of the pages. I like the art in it, but it's the rules I've read through. I was like, ooh, this is very different than what
Yeah.
I'm used to. But the artwork, I found it like it made very much sense to me seeing the AD&D Monster Manual and then seeing the 5e Monster Manual and then seeing the 3 and 3.5 like books and going, oh, this makes sense that this is about halfway between those two.
Yeah.
Like, as I look, I guess when I look at the artwork, I really like to look at the progression. So I love to look at all the books and then find the beholder in the
Hmm.
book and then compare the artwork of the beholder as it goes through the
So, what do you
years.
think of the beholder with the little rainbow in its eye?
Yeah, I
That
again
hurt
my
your
thought,
soul a little bit. It
well,
hurt mine.
I looked at it and I said, again, my question was like, why? What is this adding?
Right.
Like, why do this instead of the beholder that they had for 5e
Right.
or for 4e or for 3.5 or
Mhm.
for 3.0? Like, what changed? Because to me, when I looked at it, it was a beholder with a rainbow
Well, it
eye.
was like a
Like, it
beholder
didn't.
that looked like it was made of silly putty. And it was like small and inoffensive and frankly kind of stupid looking. So right now, as you've been talking, I'm paging through Complete Arcane, which is a 3.5 splat book, and I'm looking at the art, and the art is quality wise. I actually think that it varies in quality. I mean, I can't draw to save my life, but I recognize good art, more realistic or more evocative art versus not so much. And it's decent, but the one thing that I'm seeing in all of these is they're clear depictions of classes and what they called prestige classes back in those times. But I see a lot of danger. I see adventurers in dark caverns. I see people being like beings being blasted with like arcane energy. I'm looking at this corpulent woman with like a skull makeup face and skulls sitting around her, and she's sitting in some gothic office type room writing like with a bone. That's weird. I see it now. I'm looking at like a mummy exploding. everything in this art is evocative of a couple of things. Some like fantasy mystery, danger, a little bit of violence,
Mm-hmm.
and challenges and adventure. And, like Dungeons and Dragons is it's just a ripoff of Tolkien. We have these underground places where bad stuff is, but treasures are. And there's probably a dragon down at the bottom. And that's dangerous, and it's mysterious, and it's adventurous, and it involves risk. And the problem with this art now, especially since the 2024 revision, is that to me, that art conveys none of those things. It's dwarves baking effing scones. Like,
Yes.
what
Well,
the
and that's where I think even all the way up through 5e, like the standard 5e when it came out, like if you looked at the player's handbook, the monster manual, the DMG, all of those things conveyed that kind of stuff.
Yeah, look at the covers.
They conveyed danger. Yeah. I think the change, and this is where when we were texting and talking before the recording, to me, a lot of the issue has become like, if you look at the types of campaigns that people are listening to, and that's primarily the way that people are learning about the game or are really interested, they listen to like live play podcasts or on YouTube of people playing these games.
Right.
And I think part of the issue is that those types of campaigns, they're not the super dangerous. Like they might have some dangerous pieces to them where very serious things happen, but the day-to-day that make up the episodes of those campaigns, it's not serious and dangerous. It's very fluffy. So, as the name of this podcast talks about, like it's a very fluffy story. Like, oh, like you're helping the gnome baker bake cupcakes for their whatever. Like it really does evoke the new artwork.
Really?
Yes, it does.
Like, okay, so here, little side note. I think I've said this to you before. Like, I cannot stomach actual plays.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. Like, I've watched a couple of minutes of Critical Role, and I was just like, this is horrible. I've watched bits and bobs of really amateurish people and semi-professional people trying to do actual play stuff on YouTube. And outside of a couple of instances where there's been something about a game mechanic or a game system that I was like, well, what is someone who says they know what they're doing with this? How does it work? How do they do it? Because I didn't understand it. And I wanted to hear it in action. Outside of a small handful of those, I can't stomach them because they're not gaming. They're not there to game. They're there to entertain and gain an audience, which changes the entire dynamic at the table, and it changes the sorts of things, and I think you just hit on it, that the GM and the players are going to do. It's a lot easier to be the clown or the fool than really serious. And
That's
having
right.
like, okay, my character's going to sacrifice himself, and I'm not going to be, we're halfway through the session. But I'm going to do that because, damn, that's cool for the story, and I want my character to go out big. No. Getting really serious as a person as you engage with the story emotionally, that's a lot more risky, and it puts you in a more vulnerable place than everything's yuck and ha ha and fart jokes and like trying to be funny and loud about it all. That's what I see in these actual plays.
And that's the thing is, I'll say, people my age and younger love the actual plays. Like everyone I talk to, that's how they got into it. Was
you need to be patient zero, and you need to inject yourself into your generation and solve this problem. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. You're not one of these people, are you?
No, I enjoy every once in a while an actual play, like short video where they did something funny and you watch it, but I don't watch the long form or listen to the long form podcast. That's just doesn't interest me all that much. But most of my friends do. And the thing that they enjoy is, to them, role-playing games are just another fun, funny time sink hobby that they can do. So to them, if they can watch an actual play that is funny and entertaining, that's the same goal as if they were going to meet and play every day. A lot of them don't want super serious things to deal with because our lives are super
Sure
serious.
they are.
Why are you going to do your entertainment in a
Right.
serious type way
Right.
that, oh my gosh, where do you, like, to use an example of something like, oh my gosh, the economy is horrible and I can never buy a home and my life sucks. Why would I spend my day playing a game where I'm another person where my
Where you
life
suck.
sucks? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, why would
Well,
I not go
you know
do
what?
something where I'm the super powerful
Right.
hero, or where it doesn't matter and my day to day is just like whatever I want it to be, and I can be the funny guy that makes everything hilarious, or I'm the all powerful person that I'm not in real life. That's where, for me, like, a lot of people have a power fan. They
Yeah.
either want it to be funny or they want it to be a power fantasy.
Yeah.
And there's very little in between for
Right.
a lot of players that are coming into the game
So
that are slightly older than me and down.
so back to the art. I
Yeah.
think you're right, by the way. I think that people play these games for all kinds of reasons. And sometimes I like to have just like a funny session. Sometimes I like to have like more exciting. Um, I want over the long term, I want things to generally work out to be a good story with good characters, which is going to involve some funny, some serious, some difficult, some not difficult. Well, it's going to be a variety of things. But for the art, I think you're onto something that perhaps Wizards, because it isn't anybody else. I mean, and of course, Wizards is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Um, and so I think maybe you're onto something, that they have a perception that this is what their audience wants. I'll tip my hand here. I tend to think also that the folks at WOTC are of a stripe that they believe that they believe they're doing more than gaming. They're reinforcing the right views of things. They're reinforcing they're using there's an individual I know, super nice guy, who really believes that, like, no, games are a way that you bring about the social reality, the way things should be. And I'm like, no, they're games, dude. And if you
Right.
can't, like, this is going to sound snarky, but it's like, if you can't get by in reality and you park you work out your frustrations in reality only in gaming, and you somehow tell yourself that that's enough, that's kind of sad, actually. We all have, like, power and escape fantasy sorts of things, and we read fiction for these reasons. But I think you're onto something, that there's a perception of, like, well, our audience is going to like this. And I think when you couple that with people who believe, and my ideas are right, and I'm going to use this thing as a vehicle to pimp my ideas, you end up getting this art with orcs out for a stroll, dwarfs making scones, the rainbow beholder, and for me, like I said, none of it evokes, like, what kind of adventure, unless people sit around and just kind of like just like, I don't know, piss sugar and saccharin with these, like, kind of stupid haha, let's make everything a joke sort of actual play vibe. Like, I mean, do you make a character to say, yeah, let's make a bunch of dwarves who are freaking bakers? Like,
Some people do, and this
what?
is where I think part of the thing with this is, I think WotC is reading the room in a very specific way, because I hate to say it, WotC's not trying to sell the game to you,
No.
the person who's been playing for a very long time and probably already has all of the things that they need to just do it themselves. The WotC is trying to sell it to people like me and the people that I'm recruiting for my job for college. Like, that's who they're trying to get, because those are the new people coming to the market that have nothing, that are going to spend all the money to buy stuff. And how they're getting into the game are through those actual plays a lot of the time.
Wow.
So to them, that's the market. Like, okay, if this is what these people want because they're the young people who don't have anything and are learning, they'll buy into it. That was the way a lot of my friends got into 5e, were through the actual plays. And they bought their players' handbooks and their dungeon masters guides and their monster manuals and the campaign book for what the actual play was going through. So why did my friend buy the Curse of Strahd campaign? Because he listened to someone else run the Curse of Strahd campaign and really liked it and wanted to do it himself. That's where the money is. Now that I have all my dungeons, like the books I want for D&D, I have bought no new books in 4 years.
Well, you know what?
Why they're not selling to me? They're selling to the people that don't have anything.
Here's a fascinating thing that I've learned over the years, in like the last several years of some of the publishing that I've done and some of the stuff, the contract work that I've done. I learned, I don't know if you knew this or not, but by a country mile, your player's handbook or your core rule book in any game line sells by far the most copies. Mm-hmm. And what happens is you have these like concentric circles of sales. The farther you get away from that core book, the less each of those sells. And back in the 90s, late 80s and into the 90s, this is where TSR shot itself in the financial foot, because they had umpteen different worlds. Each, you had Birthright and you had Al-Qadim and you had all these different worlds for second edition, and all of these different campaign books and all these different adventures, and also and what was happening is they were just fishing from the same pond over and over and over again. My sense with the whole 2024 update BS thing is they put out the Player's Handbook in 2014. And COVID, like Stranger Things and COVID. I think Stranger Things and COVID did two huge shots in the arm for fantasy gaming, Dungeons and Dragons in particular, but role-playing in general. And no one cares about Stranger Things anymore. Supposedly they're doing the last season, but like who gives a crap? And COVID's over. And so like the tourists who came into the hobby and enjoyed it and maybe bought some stuff, they haven't bought anything else. Now they're doing other things. Maybe they're not even watching actual plays. They're not even gaming anymore, or they've moved to totally different games. I think, and there's a lot of folks out there who reasonably intelligent folks who've like studied like the business of Wizards of the Coast and whatnot, that the 2024 update was, I mean, if you want to be really crass about it, it was a cash grab. It was an attempt to goose the engine and get some sales, because role-playing games are a weird thing. Like commercially, they kind of suck.
Yep.
Because it's not battery operated. Like if you have creativity, you only need the core books.
Well, and that's where I'm not going to go off onto this very much, because this is not the goal of this channel, but like where Wizards makes its money is from its tabletop games. Like it's card games. Like I've played Magic the Gathering, which is WOTC's other flagship thing that they run. It makes way more money because they release something every 3 months or more, and it sells hundreds of dollars of random stuff of cardboard. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons, like you said, you buy your core books and you can play the game. With Magic, if you want to keep playing with the most up-to-date stuff, you have to buy it when it comes out every 1, 2, 3 months. So it is that weird sales
there's really no way to make like a collectible role-playing game.
Unless you do what they wanted to do and try to move it all online.
Right, and make it, everything is subscription-based. Yeah, you own nothing. Yeah, screw that. Back to the art.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're onto something. We have no way of proving it. But I think it is a hard thing. It's an interesting, it's kind of amusing actually. But yes, I'm a dinosaur. And I recognize that. And to recognize like, I'm not their market. Although the funky thing is that we have the money.
Right. That is the funny part.
Your early 20-somethings, like...
We don't.
So, anyway, but I don't understand how a game the foundation of which is adventure and risk and danger and wonder and mystery and some humor and that kind of thing and some tragedy, whatever, all that stuff. Turning back to the original source material, which is to say, like Tolkien and other related authors. I just don't understand, looking at the last year and a half, 2 years worth of art coming out of WOTC, how any of it says any of that or points to that. And my question is, are there enough people who will stick around long enough with the like kind of frolicking in a field like Ralphie Wiggum or something like that? Are there enough of those people who will role play dwarves making scones or going for a freaking walk? Are there enough of those people out there to keep the brand afloat?
My guess is there are enough people that want it that they can make enough sales right now, but it's not going to sell more, if you know what I mean. It's one of those things where that is the thing that they think will get them the most cash right now. But if the weather vane shifts, WotC will shift.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it would. I think WotC would shift if the weather, if the money started blowing clearly away. And what's interesting is today, Wizards and Hasbro, I guess they're supposed to drop their quarterly earnings report, and there's all this, the question of like, there's some really like obtuse language that WotC has used to talk about the sales of the 2024 update, and questions about like, is it really selling? Has it really sold as much as they say it has? They're very close-lipped about any kind of specifics, whereas at some points in the past, like when 5e came out, they were very specific about specific, and they're not now. I think, frankly, if the financial floor were to fall out such that the corporate overlords were to say, we need to change this, I think that they would have to like turn WotC over and shake the D&D design team and the marketing. They would have to get rid of tons of those people, because this is such a personal, like, it's a personal thing. The stories and the vibe and the art that D&D is pimping right now very much comes from a very clear like angle, and it's coming from those people because that's the angle they believe in. That's what it seems like. So the only way to change that authentically would be to just get rid of those people, and that's
Right,
that's not a quick or easy process.
Right. And it's also like, and I think the average D&D player, like, they don't want people to lose their jobs.
No.
Like that's not what they want. So it's one of those things where it's like, it would have to hurt Hasbro enough for that to happen. And that would be a very big change.
Yeah.
And how much do people want that? I don't know. The one thing I do want to say, kind of beyond this, in my experience with role-playing, my new experience with role-playing games, I find myself really drawn towards the role-playing games that keep as much of their own ideas out of what they want to do away from it, and then let me build the world. The art is literally just there to give me an idea. So I've really gotten into Traveler. And I love that, and it's something that I know we've complained about a little bit with Traveler, but also I think it is beneficial that there is so little showing in Traveler, like what you should do, quote unquote. Right. It's a lot of very dry art. Like, it is a ship, or it is just the most basic, like, racial, like, idea of, here is what a Vargur looks like. So you have some general idea, but it's very basic. But in that way, it's also very open, that I, as a GM, or my players, we can change a lot. Like, yeah, this is the way the book describes it, but it's only one picture. Like, does every single of this specific spaceship, even though it's that model, look like that? No. So we can change whatever we want. And because it's so dry and basic, it gives us infinite possibilities to build that. Whereas sometimes I think there's so much Dungeons and Dragons art, especially of the newer ones, like with the older versions, there would be like one picture of this thing, but now there are dozens, and there's fan art, and there's all kinds of stuff that's out there, that it becomes very difficult. Like, oh no, that's the way that thing looks, period.
Yeah.
I have very little ability to change that, because, another thing that I've noticed with myself and other D&D players, people I've played D&D with, are like, well, that's not what the book says.
Right.
in Traveler, I don't run into that as much with my players. Like they have access. I hand them an iPad with the book in it, but they don't look at me and go like, "Well, the book doesn't say that that can't do
You
that."
don't
With
have
D&D, they do.
you don't have the system, the meta knowledge that people have from owning the books and paging through them and things like that. Yeah, it is it's ironic that this entirely made up everything, people are like, no, that's what it is. And I mean, obviously, if you want to have a coherent story, people will argue over like Star Wars canon and Star Trek canon. Oh yeah, whatever.
Right.
There's a place for that. But I think that, yeah, but that takes us back again to the art.
Yes.
That the art has a value then in conveying, hey, here's what the designer thinks a blue dragon looks like versus a black dragon versus a red dragon. There's a difference here. And they've always been shown differently. And their breath weapon is different and stuff. Okay, that's cool. Oh, that's interesting. Everyone used to, dragons, they just breathe fire. No, not these ones. And they look different because of it or whatever. But I think you're also right in that it's most helpful when the art is evocative and good enough. If
Right.
it's really good art, hey, so much the better. But when the art is just those things, it presents something, it evokes a feeling from you. Like I mentioned, did you go look up that Emrakul, the chaotic picture?
I did.
Okay, what a great picture. Like,
yeah.
The art it's good, it's not great, but it's this dude, and I'll put a link to it, Emrakul, Emrikol. Emrakul the Chaotic. It's from the first edition DM's guide. And it's this dude just riding down a cobblestone street, and he's just freaking blasting people with some like ray out of his finger. I don't know who he is. I don't know why he's blasting these people, but he's Emrakul the Chaotic. And you're looking at that, you're like, man, all these people are coming out to attack him, and there's like dead flaming people on the ground and all this. It evokes a feel. It leaves you with questions. What am I going to do? What's going on in this picture? And how does that connect to like a story I could tell or I'm inspired to tell because I'm looking at this and the wheels are just turning. And there's nothing in it of, well, this is how you should play the game. And this is how you should think about the half orcs or the whatevers. There's none of that. It actually, to me, that art is more respectful of you, the gamer.
Right.
Like, you and I have you company, and we have a relationship in that I give you money for this thing. What I do with it once I walk out of the store is my damn business.
And that's the thing that I like. I was talking to a friend about this because I said we were going to be doing this podcast episode, and he had some opinions. I said, well, I think the biggest thing for me is when it comes to role-playing games and art and gameplay and all of that kind of stuff is I'm buying the game. Let me do with it what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that other people, when they buy the game, I get no say. And my friend who also bought the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the DMG, how they run their world. If they want to do it completely differently, that's their choice.
Yep.
But I bought my copy, therefore I get to do mine. The thing is, once you get into the official artworks from those companies, it makes it very difficult because that's what everyone's basis is going off of. So the companies are using that as their baseline. Well, when you shift the baseline too much into a tone that's not the way that the people are expecting the tone to have been, that can change things. Now, what this could lead to in the future, because of the artwork, is a total tone shift that younger, newer players are expecting a very different type of tone than even a player like me who started in 5e. Right. So that's something that could happen just because the artwork is evoking a different baseline. But if I want to go and change the game and to fit what I want to do, I should be able to do that. I've given my money to do so.
You can do anything you want. I think that, personally, I think a game that is supposedly about exploration, combat, and adventure, when all the art is about people just sitting around being happy and celebrating, I hate to break it to you, but that's pretty dead end. I personally think that is a mistake, because without disruption and without danger and without you don't have a plot. And without a plot, you don't have a story. And you can't have an adventure without a story and a plot. And so if the art is of such a, there's so much of a thumb on the scale depicting things in only this certain way. Everyone's happy and loves to be around each other, and every crowd is super diverse. Like,
it would be like watching the last 30 minutes of the Lord of the Rings movies and watching none of the rest. Like, you are just watching the very end of The Return of the King.
Like the five endings?
Yeah. And be like, that's my experience of Lord of the Rings, but I now understand it because it's just the endings. Now, it's not a perfect example, but if you're like, okay, I'm watching Aragorn and Arwen get married and Frodo wake up in the White Room with all of his friends cheering and everything. Yeah. But that's a very different experience than if you watch The Two Towers. Like, that's just something that...
It's also a very different experience seeing Frodo wake up and then realizing, like, where did he go to get there?
Right.
You only have the meaning in that because there were all these other things. And the problem is, again, the art, this which I think it's a combination of the subject matter and the depiction, I think is bad. I think it's trash. Just be explicit about that. I also think a lot of the art is not particularly good. Like the color palette it's like, you know, is this an elementary school classroom? You know, I think
it's just lighter. That's a big change. Is the color palette is a lot lighter, which evokes a different emotional response. So that's where it's like, even 5e, like, which I know, like, some people complained about the 5e art being not nearly as well, like, good as previous art. But even to me, I'm like, when I look at the 5e art, it's brighter, but it's not brighter in that, like, the tone is brighter. It's brighter in, like, it's much more clear. But it's a very different thing than the ones now. Like you said, it's pastel colors, which gives an entirely different emotional response to people when they see something.
It's always a sunny day with some fluffy clouds.
Right. It's never pouring rain as a beholder is attacking you.
No, like, you're not like your wagon isn't stuck in the mud while the bandits attack you.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, so something I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of resources that if you're listening and you're not familiar with what I would call classic D&D art. Okay, if you're not familiar with classic D&D art, there are two resources. One is a book, the other is a documentary. Do you have the book that's called what is it? Dungeons and Dragons: Art and Arcana, a Visual History?
I sure do. You got it for me.
Oh, that's right. I did, didn't I? You know what's funny? I went and I looked over it on my shelf, so I made sure I got the name right. And I'm like, did I give that to James or not? If I didn't, I should. I will put a link to that in the notes. If you do not have this is a giant table, like a coffee table book. You could club someone with it. And it has this whole history of D&D art from its foundations. It is outstanding. Now, do you have Amazon Prime?
I have access to it. I don't have it personally, but I can talk about that. I have access. Yeah.
There is a documentary on Amazon Prime called Eye of the Beholder: The Art of Dungeons and Dragons. And it focuses on the 4 classic in-house artists who worked at TSR in the 80s and thereafter. Larry Elmore, Jeff Easley, and I'm brain cramping on the other two. But I have an Elmore picture on my wall right here, the cover of the original Star Frontier set. Here's the thing: if you want to look at, if you want to learn about the history of the art, the documentary is outstanding. If you want to be able to look at the art again and again and again, and just see danger and mystery and action and adventure and some fun and some haha and those kinds of that book is just outstanding. There's your classic D&D art, and I just keep going back to and scratching my head like, why would you depart from that? Not reuse the same art over and over again, but why would you depart from that vibe? Because it's so, like, I mean, I don't know. I think, I don't know. I would like to think that more people would be drawn in by the idea of something like adventure rather than
it might be because that art already exists. and the other one doesn't. So if you're trying to get the most people to spend the most money, okay, I have one style of art. If I do this other style of art, I
Yeah.
might draw in a different crowd of people. I already have the old style D&D art that I could pull out when I want to get people to buy my stuff. But if I throw in this new stuff, another crowd of people might spend money on my product.
Although I wonder because it's not like, hey, we had this vibe for the last almost 50 years. Let's add a new, like, supplementary, a parallel vibe.
Right.
No. Let's flush the other one and let us replace it with freaking pastels
And that's where
and farmers markets.
yep. And that's where I'm like, I also am not sure why that's the goal. If it were me, I would be putting them side by side and being like, here is one style of dragon, and here's a different style of dragon if that's what you're going to do. But that's not what they're doing.
I
So
would
that's
have
where
the
I'm like, I'm
dragon
not in the
come
mind.
breathe fire on, or ice or something like that, on the happy farmers market because someone in the town pissed off the dragon. Because you know what? Friggin' adventurers went up and they robbed the dragon and they pissed off the dragon and they went through town and sold some of their wares. And the dragon doesn't know where these adventurers are, but it doesn't care. It's vengeful. So it's going to come breathe like whatever on the little happy farmers festival. And all these people are going to get fried and be sad. And then adventure comes from it because then they finally recognize that they sometimes have to get pissed off and go after the dragon themselves. That's me.
There's a reason that The Hobbit is a great story.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? I'll say this, like, kind of wrapping on from my end. Yeah, The Hobbit is a great story. And my guess is that people will be reading The Hobbit in a century. People will be reading Lord of the Rings decades or a century from now because it points to and it tugs at certain eternal themes, like the idea that sometimes you want to be a hobbit,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you need to do hard things to protect Hobbiton.
Right.
And if all you do is focus on your little May festival with flowers and crap like that, if you just want to sit around and have 12th breakfast, eventually orcs are probably going to come slaughter you. And there's something that I think speaks to people. We recognize, like, okay, sometimes, like, those kinds of stories, they evoke a feeling that endures. I can't see reading books about farmer festivals.
Well, and that's where I think that it is a lot of the people who wanted to play role playing in the past, and I would include myself in this from reading those kind of books. I picture myself as a member of the Fellowship or a member of the part of the dwarven party that's going to like that's what I picture myself as. But I think a lot of people, and this is what WOTC's getting at, are they don't want to picture themselves in that capacity. They want to be the Hobbit who's still in Hobbiton. And so I think there's been a fundamental shift. Right. And there might have been a shift for some people that the goal is not to be the person going out and doing the adventure. It's to be the person that gets to enjoy everything else. And I'm not saying that's everyone. I'm not saying that that's WOTC's goal or that that's anything. But I think that there are two distinct types of people that look at that story. And some people go, I really wish I was still back in Hobbiton. And other people go, but they're, and I think a lot of people who want to play an adventure go, I want to be the person that goes out and slays the dragon. And there are different opinions. Now, is that the best way to play a role-playing game? Maybe if you can find enough people who want to do that and a GM that's willing to run that, great. But if not,
sounds like a lot of navel gazing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. This quarterly earnings report and trying to parse WOTC and Hasbro's language about, like, well, how is the brand actually doing? And I'll close with this. I don't have anything. Listen, the links to that book and the link to the documentary are in the notes. If you haven't seen either, you should get the book and you should watch the documentary. And I'll end on that. I think that role-playing games are really at their core, for the enduring participant, it is a niche hobby. It is a niche hobby that, for varying reasons, became less niche and more mainstream. I think that video games, like video role-playing games, role-playing style games, I think the convergence of that, plus COVID, plus Stranger Things, plus like geekdom being less geeky than it was 20 or 30, 40 years ago. I think all those things created a perfect storm that seemed to push role-playing games into the mainstream. They will never be mainstream. Like real role-playing games will never be mainstream. They're always going to be a niche hobby. And there will be tourists who come and go. And that's great. Those people will make companies money, and those people might be fun at your table. But they'll pass into doing something else, and that's cool, whatever. I've had hobbies that I've enjoyed that I just stopped doing, or stopped doing as much. But I really think that you're call it like your real role players, and that's not like some kind of mark of qualitative distinction. That's just people who are like, no, this is like the hobby I'm going to stick with. I think those people, in all my years of going to conventions, and all my years of hanging out at stores, all my years of interacting with those people, the people who stay, role-playing a farmer's market is not what they're there for. And it's not what they're going to part with money for. And so it's going to be interesting to see. WOTC, lots of businesses think they're doing the right thing, and lots of them go out of business because they're not. So who knows?
True. That's what I'll just end it with. I've bounced from hobby to hobby to hobby. I've played RPGs, I've played video games, tabletop card games, golf, just like all kinds of things. But there is something about the classic TTRPG that just draws people back.
Yeah.
Like, I can sit down and play a video game whenever I want from the comfort of my home, and sometimes I really just enjoy doing that. But there's something about getting together with my friends and sitting down around a table where we're all really close and can spend hours talking to each other. It just draws you back in.
Yeah.
And I know people who used to play with us a ton and now never play with us, and that's just not something that they do anymore. And I think you're right that there is something that a certain type of player is the one who continues to play over longer periods of time. But also, the great thing about this hobby is you can get out of it and then get back into it rather easily compared to some of the other hobbies that I've been involved in. So it is nice that it's one of those things where it's like, yes, a specific type of person will never stop playing, but it's also great because if you do stop, you can get back in really easy.
Yeah. Well, so we'll see. We'll see how things go, and we'll also see with like what seems to me as the prominence of role playing games in general has receded, has tapered off here in the last few years, and it's gone back to more like your hardcores. I've also seen a fragmentation of, you've got all these people, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket compared to WOTC, but when you have enough of them, it means something. Like you've got your really hardcore, like Call of Cthulhu people. You have this perennial audience for Traveler games that like kind of exist in the shadows because like you never see them at game conventions. Not where I am at least. And then you got games like Shadow Dark, that are pointing back toward, again, this danger and adventure and risk and those kinds of things. And the art in that very much evokes that, and doesn't point in any direction. It doesn't wag a finger or say you should or you shouldn't in terms of like your tone. So it's going to be interesting to see what this stuff adds up to. I personally think it's a dead end and a huge mistake and a disservice to 50 years of this game. But I'm not the one who writes the checks, so, and I don't buy their stuff, so. All right. Well, anyway, the links to that book and some of this art, good and bad, and that documentary are in the notes, and we'd love to know what you think.
I agree. Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes.